Joe Pignon's got some ideas and opinions on this, and his are usually astute and on point. And joining us right now is Joe Pinion from his super cool backdrop there. Joe, I'm seeing a lot of different backdrops, but yours is on the money. The books are all straight. The flag is hung right. I mean, you're looking good, kid.
Look, man. I haven't seen my barber in a month, but I mean, at least we can organize the books behind us, right?
So, Joe, I don't know if you heard a little bit of what I was talking about there coming into this segment, but I am just amazed at how cultivated Joe Biden's whole campaign is right now. It looks like, somebody's out there pulling the strings, and Joe, he's not in on the joke.
Well, look, I think, I was talking to some friends earlier. I said, look, if you couldn't have picked a candidate more uniquely unsuitable to run for president in the middle of a national quarantine, right? So if you think of Joe Biden, sometimes he forgets what state he's in. Sometimes he forgets what office he's running for. But if you put him in a room with people, he inevitably finds a way to connect. Well, now getting in a room with people is illegal. And he's basically running for president in a campaign that will be done it's the made-for-TV candidate Donald Trump. So I think it has disaster 101 written all over it. That's why you see everybody from Bernie Sanders to former President Barack Obama coming out of the woodworks, trying to prop up old Joe. But I think it's really going to be a tough slog ahead for former Vice President Joe Biden here.
Yeah, when I think basically Obama's got to get out there on the campaign trail and just say, vote for him. You know what I mean? Because Joe Biden has demonstrated nothing other than if Obama's buddy, James Clyburn, did not come to the rescue of Joe Biden in the South Carolina primary, if James Clyburn stayed out of that, Bernie Sanders would probably be the nominee right now. So James Clyburn basically saved Biden, and I think it was on behalf of Obama and the establishment to say, just get him the endorsement already. We can't have Bernie in there. Then we got to hand over the keys to the castle, all the fundraising records and all this other stuff. They didn't want the new apparatus to come in and have control, so they went with, let's just go with old Joe and he'll do what we say.
Well, as the old saying goes, when the gods wish to punish you, they answer your prayers. And so, Democrats in the establishment were so terrified of Bernie Sanders playing his socialist flute and leading the children into peril. They all got on the Joe Biden bandwagon. Well, guess what? The one thing they didn't see, or anybody didn't see, was a national quarantine, a global pandemic that literally strips Joe Biden of all the tools that would have been at his disposal to try to bridge that enthusiasm gap. And so now you can't have President Obama going state to state on a whistle stop tour, trying to get African American enthusiasm through the roof for him. You can't even try to get Bernie Sanders to go out there and try to get enthusiasm for him. Really, this is a mano showdown in ways that I don't think the Democrats were truly prepared for. And so again, if you're talking about who is going to be able to go toe to toe to win the hearts and minds of the American people, directly to the camera, President Donald J. Trump or Joe, sometimes I forget my name, Biden. I think that's really not going to be a contest the Democrats are going to come out on top with.
I'm a boxing enthusiast, and it reminds me of when Mike Tyson fought James McNeely. You remember the guy? Remember McNeely, the Hurricane? They called him, and he was talking all kinds of trash that he's going to shock the world, and he was knocked out in like 2 seconds. Yeah. But Joe, what about this other notion that people are floating around social media and stuff that Cuomo's done so great that they're going to replace Joe Biden with Andrew Cuomo? What do you think about this?
Well, look, I think, on paper, that sounds great. But I think the people that floating that, they clearly don't live in New York. I mean, we're talking about a man who's the corruption skeletons in his closet would make Hillary Clinton's emails look like Club Med. right? I mean, this is a man who, I mean, people forget. I mean, he founded a Moreland Commission to investigate corruption that actually snared his best friend. Then he shut down the commission when they turned its sights on him. He now doesn't pretend he doesn't know who Joe Percoco is. So, I mean, if you're talking about, issue by issue, I mean, the man's been governor for 10 years. He's never had a state issued email address just for the chance that he might actually have a paper trail. So I think, he is custom built for President Trump to do what President Trump does to everybody else. He'd be calling him corrupt Cuomo by day. Our own Greg Kelly or Sean Hannity would be bringing on Preet Bharara and running old Preet interviews to just remind the American people how close he was to probably getting indicted himself. So I think, yes, on paper, you could say, yes, Cuomo looks, quote unquote, presidential. But again, he's got some less than presidential catastrophic baggage looming just below the surface.
Right. So for those of you watching at home who aren't here in New York, like Joe Pinion and I, Andrew Cuomo's best friend, okay, they called him the underboss. They called him many things. He was his best friend, okay, Staten Island's own Joe Percoco. And when billions and billions of dollars were being handed out up in Buffalo to do all this economic development and stuff, Joe Percoco's wife got a no-show job at one of these companies, and they were writing these emails about how many boxes of pasta his wife is going to get. And, that works in the movies when they're on the phone trying to avoid a wiretap. But when the government reads, we're bringing, 10,000 boxes of pasta, and then $10,000 shows up in Joe Percoco's wife's bank account, it's pretty easy to tell that the boxes of pasta were code. And Percoco's in jail. This was his right-hand man, drove around with him every single day. So when people think he's so great, and I see women swooning over him on the internet about how handsome he is and that he has nipple rings and all this other stuff, his best friend got investigated by a commission that he started, the Moreland Commission. He got locked up for it. Then they went to look at Cuomo, and he shut down the whole commission. So, I think you're right, Joe, that there's more skeletons there than maybe they even want to be bothered thinking about. Speaking of skeletons, Nancy Pelosi's doing the late night talk show segment. Last night, last night, maybe with James Corden. What is she doing right now, Nancy Pelosi?
I really don't know what she's doing. I mean, she's showing off how many pints of ice cream you can fit into a custom refrigerator in the home of the rich and famous. Basically, an episode of MTV Cribs all by herself. Meanwhile, the businesses that are in desperate need of cash, we've got the PPP running out of money, and she's over there showing off, her snack collection. So I think, again, when we talk about what needs to happen, this is not a partisan issue. This is just the fact that you've got Americans who are in pain. You've got small businesses that are out of money and out of time. It's as if these people in D.C. didn't know that the deadline to refund the program was coming. We've known what day this was going to be when they signed the bill in the first place. So I think, again, people need to get out of their homes, get back to their offices, start working for the American people, because, again, $1,200 is not going to cut it, right? One check for $1,200 is not going to get us where we need to be. Summer 2020 has already been canceled. They just haven't told the American people that. This notion that we're going to be back to normal. You've got bureaucrats trying to retrofit America's economy to a world that has been forever changed. So they need to get in gear, get in line, and make sure that people on Main Street have the resources they need, not that they have the ice cream they want in their freezer.
Yeah, it is pretty scary that I'm in it, okay? I'm doing some consulting, advising for a couple of banks. And the banks are working their tail off to try to get this thing administered. But the government guidance with so many agencies involved has been a disaster. But by any measure, there are approximately 30 million small businesses in this country, 30 million of them. And they allocated $350 billion. So if you do some simple math, they had to know this money was running out because everyone with W-2 employees qualifies. And at $350 billion, you got like, $1,100, $11,000 per company is all they allocated. If every company qualified for something, it would be 11 grand. And a lot of companies qualified for a lot more than that. So they knew all along this money was running out. And Joe, I can tell you this. My company put our application in on April 2nd. The program started on April 3rd. We were shined up, had the latest application, okay? On Friday, when it went effective, we dropped it, okay? On Sunday, we got a notice. Need a wrong application. They gave us a new application. So on Sunday afternoon, we had to do it again. On Tuesday, they came back, there's a different app. They don't want us to use that one anymore. So we resubmit again. We don't lose our place in the queue, but 3 times we had to come up with a new application. As it stands today, January, I don't even know what month it is anymore. April 17th, okay, we submitted on January 2nd. Nothing done yet, nothing. We got an approval number that said on Wednesday of this week, you got a number from the SBA, now hold, okay? 2 weeks later, not a penny. So I'm scared for myself.
Yeah, I mean, it's a disaster. I mean, for every one success story, you can probably find 10 stories like yourselves with individuals who have done everything the government has told them to do and still can't get the resources that the government has promised. And so I think, again, this is not about having not being able to say I laid the burdens down at the feet of Nancy Pelosi or Democrats pointing at President Trump. It's just about us getting a system that works, because time lost are jobs lost. Time lost is opportunity lost, and these are people who are not going to be able to necessarily come out stronger than they were before. I mean, I think we spent a lot of time talking about these, what we call the disenfranchised Americans. I think, I was talking to Nico before, we have to start talking about, what I call as the neglected or taken for granted Americans. And those are the people who are paying their rent, even though they don't have a paycheck coming in, because they do the right thing. They've always done the right thing. They've lived by that 50-30-20 principle, right? They don't spend more than they make. They've saved diligently. And those are the people who are going to be wiped out in this tragedy because they did the right thing, because they have the savings allocated so they can continue to pay their bills. And guess what? On the backside of this, there's no bailout for them. So again, if we're sitting here talking about airlines and all these places, let's remember there are more bartenders and barbers than there are bankers. There are more waitresses than there are individuals who are taking care of all of this kind of bureaucratic nonsense. So let's just dispense with the buffoonery and the pointing the fingers and just get the job done.
Joe, always great commentary from you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And, I think the last time I saw you, we were in studio. We did a couple of minutes with you and Aaron Elmore.
Yeah.
I had Aaron on the other day, and I'm just waiting for the day we can get back in that studio and have a cocktail together.
Yeah, I think Aaron's going stir crazy. I think I'm losing my mind. So we got to get back in the studio soon.
Yeah, we need it. We need it. Thanks a lot, brother. Really appreciate you joining us today.
Have a good one.
You the man. That's Joe Pinion.